Okay, so this last panel is probably the most useful for everybody that's here in the audience. It's about how to sustain a career in the music business. So I don't think we'll be providing all of the answers, but maybe some of the answers. So we've got about 45 minutes, 50 minutes because things are running late. So what we'll do is we'll just start talking to people about their own careers and ideas and pitfalls and problems they've had in trying to sustain a career in music or music-related business. So we'll start with you, of course. And actually, before I start with you, I'd say thanks to More Music for putting this on today and funding it as well. And that's you, isn't it? Yeah.
It's me, yes.
So who are you? What do you do?
Hi everyone, so I'm Marianne Barraclough and I'm the Executive Director at More Music. More Music is a community music organisation, a charity based in the West End of Morecambe, and we run lots and lots of creative programmes encouraging young musicians to build their craft and to experience working with professional musicians and to kind of launch them into their careers. We also have sessions for the widest range of our community to come into the building, to be creative, to make music, and to kind of see what that can bring them. So what benefits they can get from making music. We promote gigs and we do lots of work in schools, and we love to encourage young musicians coming through about the wide variety of roles that there are in the music industry, and to look at all those opportunities rather than just being the person who sings or is in the band. So that's something which we really care about as well.
I think what you do with More Music is a great example of what people have been talking about today. It's very grassroots, it's a very central hub, and it's usable for everybody, because there is a danger that music is locked out of lots of sectors of the community. In Morecambe, I mean, God bless Morecambe. It's hard there in Morecambe. There's not a lot of money in Morecambe, and you're in the West End of Morecambe, which is one of the poorest parts of Lancashire. And what you're doing there by your building there is actually creating a space where things can happen. I think that's important. Do you want to talk about what More Music does there?
Yeah, I think the connections that we have into the community are really important. So we try and offer a really broad range of ways into the building, and actually trying to make the building feel as welcoming and as accessible as possible. We really support young emerging bands to have their opportunities to form as bands, to develop their craft, and then to we then encourage them and support them to perform beyond More Music. So whilst we make this safe space for them in the building, we are also really interested about how we can support young artists develop. Actually, there's a programme that we run called Girls Can, which is all about supporting young girls and non-binary people into the music industry. And there is a parent here today of one of those bands that formed at More Music, and they've developed over time, and they're now performing at Lancaster Music Festival through the support that they've got at the organisation. So those are kind of individual examples of ways that we can support young musicians to grow. But I think being based in Morecambe it's a really interesting place in the West End of Morecambe. Ambition is generally quite low, and so we're doing everything we can to try and encourage people to find what it is that they love to do, whether that's music or whether that's something else. But by coming into the space and finding that spark of positivity and creativity, it could lead them on to anything, and that's what we try and do, certainly.
I mean, when people go in there, and it's great you open that door and give a space for people to get empowered, but do you talk to them about how to sustain a musical career and be based in Morecambe so you don't necessarily have to move to the big city?
Yeah, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because opportunities are limited, but I think what we do is try and open up people's eyes to the very wide range of careers that are available in the industry, whether that's supporting some of the young people who've come through our programme then come work with us on mentoring programmes. They can learn to be sound techs so that they can take those skills on, or learning about marketing or any of the other skills that go behind in the whole of the music industry. So we do everything we can to try and highlight those pathways. it's hard because actually a lot of the time we're hearing from young people that they're being discouraged. They're being told the music industry isn't viable. And so we're then fighting against that, working with young people to try and show them actually there is a vast range of roles that you can do out there. And it's just about trying to be really flexible and grasping all the opportunities that are presented, and then trying to find the thing that you're going to be passionate about and that's going to move you forward. So not always easy, but we do try.
So there's one really good piece of advice already there. You talk about what's grandly called a portfolio career. So if you want to play bass in a band or whatever, don't just play bass in a band. Learn to do all the other roles, which at your place, you encourage that, actively encourage you, also teach people how to do these other roles.
Yeah, and absolutely, even within being a performer, actually. So my previous role, I worked in an orchestra, very different setup. But the musicians that I work with there, even though they're performing on a professional stage as an orchestral musician, they're also teaching, they're orchestrating and arranging, they're doing outreach programs, they're doing a vast range of things beyond the work that they're doing on the concert platform. So actually it's about embracing what being a musician can mean, or finding all of those other roles, like the things that have moved me forward in my career.
So Chris, you, like a lot of people move, say from Morecambe to Manchester or to London. You've done it the other way around. You've moved from Manchester to Morecambe, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I've gone out to live on the coast and have a sea view and amazing sunsets. So I'm literally based around the corner from More Music. I've got a studio there. I've been in the music industry for 50 years. I've been round the block a few times, and I teach these days as well as mentoring and doing session stuff as well.
So, I mean, because you were a professional drummer for a long time, weren't you? So,
Still am.
yeah.
Thank you.
But what we want to talk about there is you do different roles. It's underlying this idea that it's not just getting paid to play drums, it's about teaching drums, mentoring people. And this,
I think that's the longevity of a career.
Yeah, this can be done any
that. You don't start.
Yeah.
I didn't start out thinking I'm going to be teaching drums down the line. I was just wanted to play in bands. I just wanted to play music. So I wasn't thinking about, oh, I want to learn how to set the PA up or how to do the lights, because there was other people around doing that. So I was, my gig was being the drummer. And I was just focused on that. So I wasn't thinking, and I wasn't thinking about a career in the music industry either. I was just thinking about, I'm a musician, I would like to play music. And that was it. I wasn't there to think about making money or, I wasn't thinking I'm going to be still doing this in 20 years' time. It just so happens that I was. So you've got to put the work in, but then there's a lot of luck comes into play with the industry as well.
I mean, that's an interesting thing there, wasn't it? Because in the 70s, 80s, it wasn't looked on so much as a career option. And the idea that this could be a career is now, I think everybody kind of expects it to be a career. And so they should, in a sense, but it's how do they do that? Yeah.
Why should they?
Well, you
A lot of people aren't talented enough. A lot of people, there's talent and there's luck. Everybody thinks they should be able to sell loads of, or do lots of downloads on Spotify, but sometimes what you're putting out is crap. So why should it work?
It is a unique industry for that, because if you don't sell the tickets, you don't get paid. That's kind of what you're saying. Yeah.
It's bums on seats.
So, like, moving to Morecambe and moving out of the big city of Manchester, and today's about the music industry in Lancashire. Do you see a difference between them? Heavily involved in the Manchester world, now out in Morecambe.
Sorry, John, I didn't hear that
the
clearly.
idea that we'll talk about this is a Lancashire event today.
Yeah.
And you've moved into Lancashire from Manchester.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see that as a very different world?
Completely different.
In what kind of ways?
Lancashire's just spread out all over the place. What we're talking about: Blackburn, Darwin, Morecambe, Lancaster. Which bit of Lancashire are we talking about? I mean, it's a huge. The Lancashire Music Summit, what does that even mean at the moment? How's it affecting any of the little grassroots towns? Blackburn, it's a huge task, the Lancashire Music Summit. It's a great idea. If it gets people talking, it gets people networking, but where does it go? I don't know.
So one problem it could have, and it's great that it is here, and it's an umbrella thing,
Yeah.
but there's no discernible Lancashire thing. These are all very separate identities. Do they even have to join together? That's the other thing.
Say again, sorry.
Do they even have to be joined together, you know?
I don't see how they can be joined together. You know, that's my personal opinion on it. I know what Tony was saying before, this holistic approach. I don't know how that works, and I'm not being negative about it. I think it'd be great, but it's like, you know, it's great to see things like Skiddle come out of it, the guy with Tokyo Industries, but what it wants, I think, here is like an agent, these talent spotters. There's all sorts of things that I don't see at the moment, where I don't see enough grassroots venues for the bands, and you know, it's such a different industry nowadays from when I was kind of starting out, and I don't think there's that many venues to play these days for young bands. And I think particularly in Morecambe, there's loads of venues, loads of pubs with people there, but I'm not seeing 18, 19-year-old kids and people going down for the Monday night gig at this venue, and it doesn't matter which band is on. You go down because there's a gig on that night to see what's happening. I'm not seeing that.
So the culture's changed. I mean, are we in danger of trying to preserve an old culture, or is that old culture actually a valid culture in the 21st century?
I think it is. I think, you know, I teach young musicians, and I've got teenagers that I've taught now for quite a while, and they're in up-and-coming bands. Some of them have moved to Manchester. They're coming through. They've got the same enthusiasm that I had when I was 18, 19, 20, and they're getting those gigs. They're getting out and hustling for the gigs. So I don't see it's any different if you're that age. We're old farts.
Yeah, some are even older.
Well, you're a dinosaur.
So is it a matter of still having to move to the city, which is what we're trying to stop here in a sense? Or do we work with the city? It's an advantage to have...
Is there anybody else on this panel? You're just asking me everything.
There's plenty of other questions.
All right, go on. You think you don't have to move to Manchester? No. I think, you know, that's what I'm saying about having more of an infrastructure for the industry here, where there would be agents, these promoters. I think things like the Ferrets. I mean, I don't know these venues very well, but I think what they're doing is admirable. And if they're putting on young, unknown bands, then I applaud what they're doing, you know. And some nights it's going to be empty a bit, and other nights they'll... And that's why you've got to have local bands that create a following. And then you can get maybe a network of, like, they can play in Darwin one night, they can play in Blackburn the next, they can play in Morecambe the following night, and a bit of a circuit. Somebody should try and develop that.
It's a good idea. Yeah, like it was in the 60s in a sense. Yeah. So, okay, so you're again, you were from the city, but you moved out, when I say out, I am from Lancashire originally, so... But you moved back to Lancashire, out to Lancashire. So why did you do that?
Well, I mean, so if you don't know who I am, my name's Will. I present a radio programme on BBC Radio Lancashire and Radio Cumbria as well. I have a stammer. I know that's quite ironic given that my job is presenting on the radio anyway. So my job is playing... up-and-coming local new music on the radio every Thursday and Saturday evening. So as soon as this is done, I'll be driving to Blackburn to present 2 hours of new music on Radio Lancashire and Radio Cumbria, as I say. It's called BBC Introducing. You might have heard of it. It's been around for a while. There's a network of lots of us around the country. But I'm originally from Salford, which is old Lancashire, so not Lancashire anymore, but if you're old enough, which I'm not, it still is Lancashire. And as long as my aunt puts Salford, Lancashire on on letters, it will in my head always be Lancashire. The way by which I actually don't live in Lancashire. I live in Manchester, which I'm always very embarrassed to admit to people. But I actually don't think that affects my work too much, to be honest. I try to go to, if I can, I try to go to 2 or 3 gigs a week if I can. As far all over the place as I'm able to. So last week I was at one in Manchester, and then the following night I was in Blackpool, Preston the week before that, Lancaster before that. I did a trip to Barrow a few weeks ago to check out the metal scene there. I think for to kind of pursue the question that you're sort of dealing with, I actually don't think the problem is as big as you may be suggesting it is. I think Lancashire has the infrastructure that we are suggesting it wants to have. There are venues all over the place, but the problem that I constantly encounter with artists and music lovers in this county in particular is that they don't actually know about what's happening basically 5 miles away from where they are. So if, for example, if we think about Manchester, obviously I'm from Salford, so I know Manchester fairly well. There are probably more venues on Oldham Street, if you're familiar with it, in the Northern Quarter, than there are in Lancashire. So if you know Oldham Street and you go to gigs on Oldham Street, then you automatically know, I don't know, 7 or 8 venues. We have Night and Day, The Castle, Gulliver's, Mountain Fred's, all that kind of thing. But in Lancashire, so there are probably as many venues on Oldham Street as there are in the rest of the county. So if you are from Darwin, then realistically, your only option of going to go see a live show is Sunbird Records, which is a wonderful venue. If you haven't been, you should do. If you live in Lancaster, realistically, if it's not Cantina, there are other options as well. There are plenty of pubs and a great open mic scene in Lancaster, but Cantina is probably the place to go. And Cantina put on a lot of tribute stuff. If you're in Preston, we have the Ferret, we have the Continental, we have Choose Yard doing the odd thing here and there. But again, not a lot of options. But if you add all of that up, there is actually quite a lot. It's just about connecting it all together. So we're talking about, well, while we're comparing it to Manchester, next week, is that this weekend, Neighbourhood? Is Neighbourhood this weekend? Yeah. So there's 10, 15, 20 venues all in Manchester, all doing one ticket entry to all those venues. I mean, it's great value for money, and a lot of bands won't tour through the Northwest because they're playing Neighbourhood, which is a problem in itself. But if that happened in Lancashire, the infrastructure is there to do a 20 venue event in Lancashire, but how would you possibly do it? Because the venues aren't 20 yards apart; they're 20 miles apart. So the whole thing is kind of exploded on one bigger map rather than a smaller one.
So somebody who sort of works with a lot of sort of bands in Lancashire on your radio show, what do people talk about the difficulties of having a sustainable musical career? Is it, like you're saying, everything's spread out quite a long way away, Manchester gets all the attention, they're locked on the outside, or is that just kind of myths? I mean, what do people sort of say that makes it difficult to have a sustainable musical career in Lancashire?
I mean, one solution a lot of people take is moving to Manchester. I don't think that's a very good idea, to be honest, because there are a lot of people there already. You're competing with a lot more people. It's going to be harder to get people's attention. Take a band like British Birds, if you've heard of British Birds. If you're unfamiliar with British Birds, then I would recommend you listen to them as soon as you can. They're from Chorley. I think they've kind of they've really kind of torn up the blueprint in a way of how you can get people's attention without playing in front of the inverted commas biggest audience you can find. They played Atherton, Horwich, Halifax, Darwin. They did a gig at an ice cream parlour in Chorley in April. So there are ways of doing it. It's about being creative and thinking, how can I do this in a way that is most me? I think one problem that artists struggle with is that they find, for example, one band that I find get ripped off quite a lot are Queens of the Stone Age. There are loads and loads of music that I receive where the riff is effectively a faux Josh Homme riff. And that's great, but we already have Queens of the Stone Age. We don't need another one, and they're wonderful, but we don't need 2 of them. But what artists should do instead is to try and find what makes them an individual, and then allow that to not just be a part of the music, but in fact everything that that they do. So it's about kind of perfecting a real individuality and letting that seeping into the entire operation. It's not just about the music. And I think that is the real crux of how to make the movement as quick as possible, to progress as quickly as possible, because then you're not competing with anyone else. You're only you're entirely forging your own path, and that's the only way you're going to really get noticed, as far as I can tell.
And finally, I mean, that's good advice, but in something that's spread out and is disparate and thinner on the ground as Lancashire, compared to Manchester, which has a very big music industry, if there isn't a music industry in Lancashire itself, is it possible to sustain a career, not just as a musician, but in different aspects of music as well?
I think that's a really tough question. I mean, there are obviously, as I've listed, there are venues all over the place. So the places are working operationally. It's not that there aren't any venues in Lancaster and there aren't any venues in Preston. So clearly it is possible. Could you maybe rephrase the question slightly, please?
The idea that in Manchester there is a lot of music. You can sustain a career in music because there's a lot of music in Manchester. There's a music industry like there is in London, big city music industries. There is an opportunity to survive in those spaces, doing lots of different music-related careers or jobs or portfolio careers, bits of stuff. Is that harder to do in Lancashire?
I don't think so. I think it's easier actually because there's no one. There are fewer people doing it. So if you wanted to set up an all-day festival, is it Jordal from the Empire Police? You're here, aren't you? Yeah. I mean, he's doing some amazing stuff with this event he runs called Rockham River in Preston, completely from the ground up. He's got this. Is it a 2-day festival you do now? Is that what it is in July? Yeah, last year it was 1 day, and now it's 2-day. So that wasn't there before, and then all of a sudden we have a brand new festival that's popped up out of nowhere in the middle of Preston. Now, if he did that in Manchester, think about what he's competing with. There are 40, 50 venues.
Yeah.
He does it in Preston. You only have 2 other choices. So where else would you go? You go to his event.
I mean, Manchester actually has more venues than ever. It's a crazy amount of venues. I don't know how they can all sustain. But that's an interesting point because Lancashire, because there's less stuff, there's actually more opportunity to do stuff. Yeah. So, Johnny's had to go, disappeared. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to talk to you about sustaining a music career. Yeah. Eve. Yeah, introduce yourself, what you do. And we talked briefly before about how you managed to sustain a music career in Lancashire.
Yeah, so I was born in Lancashire, but when I was about 15, actually moved up to the Lakes. So similar environment, quite dispersed. And I'm now based between Lancashire and Cumbria. And I think my sort of approach to a sustainable career in music, I'm nearly 30 now, but when I started being a musician, I was like 14, gigging all over the spot, never turning opportunities down. And I think that's led to the point now where I've never really thought, how do I make a career for myself? It's just that by being open to so many opportunities and trying to carve out spaces for myself and for the people I work with, I now do have a career in music, but it's so varied. I hate blowing my own trumpet, if that's the phrase, but I've now got my own music festival. I'm in 5 bands. I teach. I teach like private one-on-one lessons, and I teach a class of 6th formers as well, doing like a music BTEC course as well. So I think this idea of a sustainable career in music, I think there's very, very few people I know who that means just dedicating yourself to one project or one job. I think it's a lot of, I've forgotten your name, sorry.
John.
John and Marianne. Sorry, John. Marianne was saying before, I was always just a singer, and I rode on the coattails of that, I'm just a singer, until I wasn't the youngest and prettiest in the room anymore. And then I had to very quickly learn to do sound tech and become a social media analyst and write good press reports and review and all these other things. So I think jump the gun for yourself. Don't just ride the coattails of some talent, and don't be a big fish in a small pond. Always compare yourself to much bigger circles than you're likely to come across in where I grew up, like Kendal or Chipping or the places I've been.
There's 2 really good points there already. One, I was talking about before, Marianne, this is the portfolio career. You could do lots of different things. The different facets of the same diamond, basically, aren't they? So if you're a creative person, you can be creative across lots of different fields. And the other thing you were saying is really important is actually creating your own jobs. You're not sitting there looking like for jobs to apply for or careers you can have. You actually just come up with an idea and you make it work. So it's very DIY, but also doing it together, I guess, those two things.
Yeah, 100%. The main ways I make money now, I didn't even know were jobs. Probably naively. When I was 16, I didn't even know I wanted to do music, to be honest. I did a politics degree, so don't shoot me for that. But like, most of the money I make now, just being crude, is writing songs for other people, for the dance world, essentially. So like dance music and dance vocalists. I didn't know that was a job when I was 16, 17. And now it's my main source of income. I didn't know you could set up your own music festival. I didn't know you could actually teach music without having a teaching qualification. So all of these things, I think, just come from being open to learning. Never think you've finished learning. Never think never get comfy, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, this is probably practical advice for people here who write songs, who do music. But how do you go from somebody who wants to get paid something for writing songs to being a person who actually gets paid for it? What was the turning point there for you?
For me, again, hard work, obviously, but I go back to what you were saying before about luck. Me and two friends wrote a song in 2016 that essentially got us signed overnight to Sony International and to Sony ATV publishers. We probably rushed into that deal, but 7 years later, we've made so many of our own connections. We're actually independent now, and so every Spotify stream we're making now is coming to us. I think the other thing to say about sustainable careers, sorry, I'm banging on now, is I think there's a difference between being really successful on Spotify and on digital platforms and then in the live space. For example, one of my projects, Lowe's, had a good couple of years where we had like 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify, loads of radio play. We were getting played on Radio 1 like 7-8 times a day for ages and ages. And we struggled to pull more than 50 people to a show that wasn't just in this space here. At home, we do okay. We can get a sort of 500 cap venue, get that busy. But beyond the sort of pearly gates of Lancashire, despite those stats, we were really struggling to make a career out of it. So, there's bands doing really, really well and making a lot more money who might, on paper, they might have 20,000 monthly listeners or not getting much radio play at all, but they've really worked the live circuit. And I'd argue they're probably more sustainable, those careers.
That's a really interesting point, I think. I think there's lots, even music and being a musician and a creative musician, there's lots of different versions of that now. It's not just band, tour, sell records like it was in the old days. You can be really successful, like you're saying, on streaming and totally unknown. It's because the song is better known than the act. 100%. Yeah, so that's an advantage, I think. I mean, if you're in a remote town and you've got a great song, somehow it's not as easy as it looks, but you can make that connection. You don't have to be in the middle of the whole music scene in a big city to do that, do you?
No, 100%. I think that's one decision we made really early on. As soon as we got signed, you essentially get some sort of chunk of money. There's 4 of us at the time. There's 3 of us now in the band, and we decided what we needed was time. We were a very new band, and in order to give ourselves the most time, we needed to live cost effectively, which meant keeping our jobs, which was mostly just gigging in pubs and stuff, the Frog and Bucket down the road or whatever, bits of teaching work on the side, and then staying around here. So people want to sort of bet on a winning horse. The thing is, in London and Manchester, there's millions of winning horses everywhere, or seemingly so. If you grow up in Kendal or Blackburn or, I don't know, Lancaster, wherever, there's not many winning horses, and people really want to bet on the local champion. So if you start making waves, use your scene, galvanize your local people, make them be proud of you, because they really will get behind you and carry you. And yeah, I think, yeah, being cost effective and sensible about your money. If you do get some heat, just try and make it go a long way, because we needed the full 7 years that lasted to carve out careers for ourselves. You get signed, you think it's done. That is like page one. Turn the page and you've got a whole book not left to read but to write. And unless you finish it, you're not going to have a memorable career for yourself or for anyone you work with.
Do you think there is a discernible Lancashire thing, or is it like the same before? It's so spread out that every town's completely different and there's no sense of musical community. I mean, of course, it's not a sound. That's always a ridiculous notion. But is there a musical community in Lancashire, like there, say in Manchester, people know each other, but here would it be split up, too disparate?
I think the way that it can work in a connected way for people in Lancashire, same as Cumbria, it's not necessarily connecting punters and fans up to each other in the same way it might be like the neighbourhood festival. You've got a set number of fans going to loads of different venues and bands, whereas I think it's sort of the opposite way for Lancashire. We need to be connected from the inside and have shared resources to pull on. So some of the ideas coming up before, like in education, we don't necessarily need to train up every high school teacher in Lancashire to talk about the music industry coherently. We maybe need to fund a travelling body or 4 or 5 or 2 groups of little posses to go around and deliver 6 weeks of useful information that's real and not based on some textbook. It's you and you and you going into a school funded to deliver good information to people so they've got the resources and knowledge they need.
So education, resources, is that what you think Lancashire would need to create a platform for more sustainable careers?
I think so. I think knowledge is power, and it's just so lacking. In a city, you get like knowledge by osmosis. You hang out with it. There's always someone's mate or someone's uncle or someone's dog's walker or whatever that knows something in the music industry, and they can talk to you about it with some sort of understanding and experience. It doesn't really exist around here that much. You don't just come across it at a party or at the pub. So we need to place it in front of people if we're going to get the same basic knowledge that is probably quite normal for, I don't know, a 16-year-old kid in London or Manchester. It just doesn't exist here because we're not getting that osmosis of knowledge sharing.
And connections as well.
100%.
But do you think also that can actually be an advantage in a way? There's a flip side to that coin, that you don't have to put your music together thinking you're going to get a record deal or a career, and you could actually end up being quite original because the isolation can actually leave you free to be creative.
Yeah, 100%. So it's 2 things, isn't it? There's the creative freedom that you get with living rurally. You're not constantly comparing yourself and assimilating yourself to your peers. We really felt that, we would, well, again, when we first got signed, we really actively held the door closed to the industry because they just wanted to get us in with all the same people, all the same writers, all the same stylists, publicists, agents, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, just hold on to your identity, hold on to your resilience. But you do need that knowledge sharing. And I think that's where something like this environment here, we can, whether it's donations of time or funded time, whatever, like, we've got a lot we do know the stuff between us, but we need to sort of package it up and give it to the next gen who will, otherwise will just be like me. I had no idea. I didn't even know the difference between a publisher and a label 5 years ago,
So in a way, using Lancashire's isolation to be creative, but the fact there's a major music business industry hub of Manchester just down the road could actually be an advantage. Bit of both.
Yeah, 100%. Creative free. We actually could have it best of both worlds. If we share this creative knowledge, the sort of mechanical understanding, but then also allow the free creative space that the rural north provides, then there's no reason we shouldn't be churning out loads of great artistic projects.
Okay, and you, sir. Yeah, so who are you? What do you do?
So my name's Jamie Turner. I'm the managing director of a company called Actual Music. My background is as a performer, so I studied at LIPA, graduated in 2012, and started my journey as a keys player and producing records. So I worked in Liverpool stayed in Liverpool for some time, and then moved to my hometown of Blackburn a few years back, and we've been doing quite a lot of work. Well, in recent times, earlier this year, we did an artist development program, which was focused on 8 high potential Lancashire artists. That covered the breadth of Lancashire. So that was very much a professional development program, and the production of assets, so single produced start to finish, videos, images, and so on. We take quite a pragmatic approach to sustainable careers, in the sense that, so I do some work with universities, have good links with RNCM and LIPA. I'm also involved in music as entertainment, so a company called Musique, which is basically an arm of Actual Music, and also an education CIC called SoMe Academy. So I've kind of got toes dipped in the whole sort of picture, really, from education, early years onwards, and sort of in the professional development space too. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about with students and graduates is around, how do you make this sustainable? Making your own music isn't just difficult to earn money from, it also costs a lot of money. So there's artists here today who are thinking that there's a big gulf between where they're at now and sort of some of the stuff that's been talked about around the revenue generation side. That we talk about practical ways of generating revenue as a musician, such as teaching, which has been discussed, and also gigging, session gigs, function gigs, and those sorts of things. And it's this sort of means of generating the revenue, portfolio career. It's the same sort of concept, but crucially that those other income streams, those other revenue streams, are contributing to the development of the artistry, building your connections with fellow musicians, and putting you in those spaces and creating sort of little networks of thought and resources, a resource bank to draw upon. And that's something, since moving back to Lancashire, we're still actively working with musicians who are based in the bigger cities of the region, Liverpool and Manchester. But there's also lots of examples of individuals, young-ish musicians, 20s and 30s and 40s, who are having sustainable and successful careers by performing, writing, producing music. Those people do exist. And they are in Lancashire, and I think the work that Tony and others are trying to do to bring that scene closer together and to connect those dots in these sort of, as you mentioned, disparate, mill towns and also rural areas in Lancashire should be applauded, and I think there's a lot more work that we can do on that.
So that's key word as well, connections. And it's even if it's different styles of music or people doing different things, people should connect with each other, shouldn't they?
Yeah, it's often sort of different sides of the same coin. Again, it may be working across multiple areas as well. I mean, as an organisation, we're genre agnostic. So, for example, the artist development programme that we ran featured artists from all walks of life, all areas of Lancashire, all genres, and everybody. I mean, we created such a fantastic community of individuals, some of whom are here today, and the sort of the feeling and the sentiment that was developed in that, everybody found that there was so much in common, that everybody spoke so passionately about being a Lancashire artist, about Lancashire being a part of their identity. And even though there perhaps isn't that sound, that sort of common thread that sort of runs through the artistic side, there is much that we can learn from each other in terms of identity, I think, and what it means to be from Lancashire and a creative and a performer.
So living in Blackburn, What would you say Blackpool would need to make it easier to work, more space for people to have sustainable music careers? Are there glaring sort of gaps in the infrastructure of the city?
Yeah, I mean, massive glaring gaps in Blackburn, and I have to applaud the work of Blackburn Darwood Council because they're quite proactive in working with us to plug those gaps. They're aware, and there's a recognition of that. There is no venue in Blackburn that is less than maybe 400 or 500 capacity, so there is no equivalent of the Ferret in Blackburn as it stands. Electric Church was there and it closed down. Blackburn with Darwin is a priority place for Arts Council. We've just got some funding to run a programme that's going to be launched probably next week now, which is called Blackburn Live, which is 100 and odd music performances over the course of the next 6 months. And that's, a lot of that's focused on the sort of bar restaurant side of things and enhancing nighttime economies because it's all interrelated. But we're looking, we're getting all of these fantastic artists who are based locally, who do have followings, who can sell tickets and bring people through the door, but there's no venue to host them in. So we're looking at pop-ups, we're looking at all sort of different ways of addressing that. But Blackburn as a town, it's a priority place for a reason. It's it is highly underserved, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Blackburn and also other sort of surrounding towns as well. But this is the work that we're doing. We're trying to address that, and we're trying to build up that grassroots music scene in places like Blackburn and make things better.
Well, good luck with that. That's a great project. So, Aziz, you're from Manchester, aren't you? So this is a different kind of conversation for you, isn't it? So, but you grew up in Levenshulme, which probably at one time felt like a long way from town.
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
No, it's Longside.
Oh, Longside, yeah. So at one time, that was almost like a village near Manchester, wasn't it? So I suppose that could be a similar-ish sort of situation.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, John, there was a venue called the Shanty, which used to have reggae nights, and then you had punk nights. Or you had it on the same day. You had reggae went on till, I remember playing with Freddie McGregor. No, not Freddie McGregor. Errol Dunkley at 5 a.m. The gig was at 5 a.m. So, but the punk night started first, and then it stopped at midnight, and then we had the reggae. We had the ragga started at midnight and went on till like 5 a.m. There was quite a few clubs, but the most famous is obviously Genevieve's, which became the International, and International 2. So you had like the Stone Roses were rehearsing there, and because the ownership, Gareth, manager, in partnership with Dougie and
Matthew.
Roger Eagle. Yeah.
Matthew as well.
Matthew. So they were, and also bands were coming in from the US. So as they were trying to break the UK, their first shows were the International or International 2. And then soul labels, jazz labels, Blue Note, they were bringing bands into International 2. Big Daddy Kane came to International, I think. Bon Jovi, a few bands, a variety, very diverse music came through Longside. And they weren't the only club, there was the Irish club as well on Stockport Road. Great music scene, very diverse, it suited the cultures that were there.
This is really the upside of living in a city, isn't it? There's so much stuff there on your doorstep, isn't there?
I think maybe, because I can't talk for every area, most areas have got their pub or club or venue that you relate to that's near you. And I mean, I used to go there when I was like 10, 11 years old with my mates, and you try and sneak in by like two of you would distract the bouncer to one side while you kind of sneaked in on the left-hand side, and then you got chucked out. But there was that kind of place where you knew the bouncers, but that's what you could hear the music coming out and the entertainment. It was drama. It wasn't just, you'd have comedy there as well, and you'd have the bingo would be there or wherever. It was community.
And also lots of different types of music and cultures at the same time, which has been an influence in your playing, isn't it? Because you could play a lot of different styles, but you do fusion, really, don't you? You fuse them.
No, I hate that word fusion.
Yeah, but it is technically a fusion.
I think fusion's like one of these it's a colonial word for where you belong. You know, like, yeah, confusion more like. But it's categories. It's like a bento box of identities, music industry. What genre are you? How do you identify? And I think it's, excuse the expression, it's a load of bollocks. You know, that people are telling you should be this just so that you can, is this like a supermarket? You know, where do you put the tin of beans? It goes over there and down that category, down that. Fair enough, it's great for finding something, but it doesn't identify you. You know, identity is not even complete until you maybe, if you ever get to be 80, 90 years old, you know, that's when your identity might be getting complete. But, you know, identities are unique to individuals, and I find it very, sorry, the word fusion, it just for me relates to that thing where, oh, you play world music, for God's sake, you know, what population are we talking about fits into world music and the rest of it is mainstream and you fit in fusion. To me, I hate that word. I hate all the old categorizations. Chuck them out. Get rid of all of that. This is a new era. Thank God this is a new era and there are new tools.
So how have you sustained your music? Because you've had like sometimes you played pretty big bands over the years, and then there's bits where you don't play big bands. So how do you sustain it over the years? You know.
Well, let me explain that, because that's a very good point, John. And also to introduce my friend Chris Joyce here, who was one of my mentors in a band called Simply Red. He's the drummer in Simply Red. Needs to be pointed out. And I joined Simply Red in 1987, and Chris taught me a lot about music industry, and about being an artist, and about how you need to survive being an artist. You know, that it's not just like, you know, you play, I'm a guitarist first and foremost and a composer, but to just play is not enough, it's business. And you've got to develop business ethics. You've got to develop professionalism. You've got to be somewhere on time. Don't piss people off. I mean, if you see my gig right now, I'm like Flavor Flav. I'm carrying around a huge digital clock I bought off Amazon, about this big, just so I get on stage on time and I get off the stage on time, and not annoy anybody, and let the festival or the venue or the event that's took ages organising and bands rehearsing their sets, that you don't mess things up. That's called professionalism. I can't stress enough how important. I mean, I'm 60, right? And I act like I'm 16 only because I'm a gigging musician, meaning I was supporting a band on a tour. They call Marseille, and I've been supporting them over the UK on a tour. And I'm grafting. I'm carrying 7 guitars around. I'm carrying 2 amplifiers, a humongous pedal board, and I'm carrying it all myself. So nothing's changed for me. I've been placed, you know, I'm a former guitarist from Simply Red, the Stone Roses, Ian Brown. I write songs for Paul Weller. I write songs for MC Akala. I was in Rebel MC. I was in a Pakistani group from Lahore touring. I worked with the British Council touring Libya, Syria, Jerusalem, the whole of the Middle East, South Asia, places where musicians have never been. I'm leader in residence for UCLan, and I've got an honorary doctorate from Salford University because UCLan wouldn't give me one. And and also, so I've been quite a few places. Sorry, I'm only trying to get to the point that I'm a gigging musician like today, carrying my shit around, but the sustainability has come through adapting to environment, to the changes that happen, not having a bias in music, because music shouldn't have prejudice. It should be all there for you to enjoy, because there are so many. There was one good point in the earlier panels about collaboration, that collaboration is a route, that when you collaborate with other people and stop pretending you're better than everybody else, it opens you up to a diverser audience. It leads to creativity. It pushes you in directions. I work with my friend here, Johnny J. So, you know, I have certain biases, but I play a traditional instrument, and Johnny comes from DJing, producer, digital. So we don't agree. We don't agree, but we learn from each other we learn things that we never knew before. And I have the utmost respect for DJs. In fact, I've taken on DJ practices just to survive, because I believe that this approach to thinking of audience first, I think that's a very good point about how you sustain your career, is to think about audience. That you can go on stage and be me and my art, but if you've cleared the dance floor like Alice Cooper, I don't know whether the approach is right, that you have to take in account the music you're making, the songs you're making, the way you're making it. There are so many aspects to it that we could talk about, but I think also to look at the way that DJs take on production and take that onto the stage and you're giving value for money. At the end of the day, somebody's buying a ticket, regardless of how much they paid. You should be giving value for money. You should have integrity to give back what people pay for.
So being adaptable, that's what you're saying.
The word, yes, is, see, this is one thing about performing. I think that as artistry is about adapting to environment as well. It's not about completely changing your environment. Survival happens through adapting to environment. And when you look at where you are and where you're at, how you perform and how long you set, simple things like, is your tune too long? Are you boring people? Am I boring people with my conversation? You have to think about all aspects of it and look at yourself in the mirror and be honest. But I think if a 60-year-old ugly geezer like me, a Pakistani working class council estate, can do what I've done in my life, surely you good-looking Ute with your good looks and intelligence can do far better than I can do. I think that's the point.
How do you create the opportunities? Like if you're like somebody here who wants to get in, because you've already done the thing, you've got the CV, you've played the gigs. How did you get that break in the first place?
The thing is, breaks. Let me just answer that straight away. I got the break because I was the kid that people saw on the 192 bus in Manchester, right? He had a guitar on his back and he was on the back seat, and you never saw him without that guitar. You never saw me walking down any street or going anywhere without this guitar. And if you ask where my guitar is right now, it's back here somewhere, right? It's always with me. So I think that's the first thing that when Simply Red were thinking about a new guitarist, I mean, Chris can probably tell you a true story, that my name came on the radar as a possibility. Who knew? I was working with, reggae was one of the criteria for a Simply Red. And I was working with Dennis Brown, Barrington Levy, Freddie McGregor, Errol Dunkley. See, people talk about Stone Roses. That's 3% of my life. Reggae music is actually the true part of my life, but people don't see that.
How did you get to play those people in the first place? What's the bit where you get to the door, knock on the door and get in?
Like I said, no prejudice in music. The fact that you enjoy music.
When
a man calls you and says, hey, do you want to come hang out at the Blues?
If you were 16 in here, you're thinking, well, it's all right for him to say, but how did he cross the threshold in the first place?
It's not all right. No, I'll answer that. Yeah. It's not all right for me to say, I'm Pakistani, I'm Muslim, I come from a council estate. Nobody's given me a look in. I mean, it'd be worse if it was gender too, if it was trans or I had some disabilities, It's a hard life for everybody, but my level of hardness is not your level, I call it white privilege. I don't have that. I did what I had to do within the confines of what I did, but at that age, I didn't care about money. It was the fact that this instrument took me out of my environment and took me into a world where I got pure pleasure. And it gives me that same pleasure right now. And it's not the success story. I can't tell you I've made millions, but I can tell you I've done things that sustain my life through where I've been, where money can't buy. To stand in a stadium with, how many was it, Chris? 150,000 people in Sao Paulo looking at you, and you're thinking, I wish my mum and dad were here. That means everything as an artist to want to play. First is passion. Just one thing to add, sorry, John, but working in Lancashire, because it's about the relevance to you. I work in Lancashire because I discovered that if I can't get shows in conventional venues, And if I can't work and get paid, then where else can I do that? So I thought, I know where. I can play museums and art galleries and libraries. I'm going to create work by challenging institutions that, why are musicians not working in Lancashire's heritage sites? So I challenged the Arts Council. They gave me a grant, a small grant, and I went to Heritage Learning Lancashire here in, based in, Lancashire, cover all of Lancashire County Council. And they introduced me to Helmshaw Mills. And then the next minute I was at the Lancashire Archives, and I was in Burnley at Queen Street Mills. I went up to Tully House up in Carlisle. I was all over Blackburn. I was sitting on a panel about textiles, talking about how does protesting through textiles and music. I challenged institutions and they gave me a job. And the only reason I say this is that working in Lancashire, you got to look around beyond the confines of what is just the conventional. The digital world opens up the globe for you. So it's not just Lancashire. The source is Lancashire, the heritage, the inspiration, but the reach is global. That you can be successful just doing what you do in your bedroom, but as long as you concentrate on what you do, you can diversify, fine, but focus on what you really shine at, because you're going to share that online. People, like-minded people are going to join with you and go, I like this Lancashire thing that you do, this influence that you've got. I'm not talking genres, I'm just saying talent that you've got individually. And you don't need to be the best. You can be anybody. It's just reflecting identity and reflecting personality. It's not a competition. It's not about I'm the greatest this and that or being the next Oasis. It's about being yourself. Empower yourself. And I think that's it. Lancashire individuals empowering themselves with what they got. That is the direction for artists. The sustainability is called the hustle. That's what they don't teach you in education. It's called the hustle. We're just out there hustling all the time. It takes energy, it takes passion, it takes getting up from being knocked down. And that's what I've learned. I'm a guy who gets racism all the time from, on the streets to in the industries to the knockbacks. It's just, you've got to have that strength to keep trying and keep doing it. When you see the wall, go under, go over, go around. That's the best advice I can give you when it comes
So hone your craft, think outside the box and hustle.
Well, I don't think it's a new craft. I mean, I'm talking, who didn't start with bootleg software? Who doesn't start with copying or a cheap PC or a shareware? That's what I learned in lockdown. My life was almost destroyed by 9/11 when nobody wanted to know me because of the letters in my name and COVID, not being able to work as an artist. But, I'm losing track of where I'm at, but I think in between, I learned new skill sets. That's what it was. In those periods, I learned to, I learned to be online. I learned to use OBS Studios to create content. It was free. I learned DaVinci Resolve to make videos. It was free. So I think maybe we're sharing that we use whatever resources are available when they're free. And then we can branch out from that when we can get, I have an ability, I call it the gift of the blag, right? Where you blag big companies to give you free products. So I think about what I need and I target those companies to give me free products. And of course I'm going to throw the card. I'm going to play the Simply Red card. I'm going to play the Stone Roses card. I'm going to play the reggae card. I'm going to play the hip hop card, whatever. But the point is, to achieve my results, I use whatever resources I got to get the tools that I need to carry on creating. But the best tools I've ever had, I can honestly say, are the ones I've got in my pocket, like my phone. It's been invaluable, and they're cheap phones, not special, but they get the job done. And I think the instrument you do, or the microphone you've got, or the pen you've got, they're the best tools ever. You don't need all the fancy gadgets and everything. As long as you're being creative and you keep putting it out there, and there are means to put it out there, there's nothing holding you back. You can get it out. There's a lot of stuff out there. That's why I say you have to focus on what you're doing and stick to what you do and keep doing that. I keep straying off. I'm an artist. Of course, that's what we do. We get creative and we go off on this. Oh, my mate asked me to do that and my friend said do that. But, you know, working with other people who are successful, it's great to listen to them and realize that they say focus.
Focus as well then, yeah. So, Johnny, you're back. Yeah. So, you've had a very long career in music, probably different aspects of the same thing for decades, isn't it? So you're a very good example of somebody who's managed to sustain a talent through the choppy waters, aren't you? So if you could introduce yourself initially and sort of say what you do.
Oh, don't know. Sorry, my head is a bit distracted. I had to do a call at just that for. I thought we were going to fit. Have you spoken yet?
Yeah, yes, it's just you now.
All right, it's just me, right? Okay, I'll try and keep it short so stop everybody falling asleep. My history: I was a body popper. Does anybody know what a body popper is? I was a shit one. I was a DJ. I guess everybody now knows what a DJ is. I DJed with vinyl, and I was a shit one. And then I got a bit better. Then I made beats, hip-hop beats. John, I think it's that the first time we met, John, where I was doing, trying to make records. So I go back, way back when, and I guess this is the front row. I guess this is the version of the cheap seats. It's a famous quote by the Beatles, by the way. And yeah, so when I started, people said, oh, you have to be a musician to make records. And obviously knowing Aziz, who was a brilliant guitarist then, I didn't know Mike at the time. I thought, well, I was too lazy. So I somehow found a computer. I actually bought a mixing desk, collaborated with somebody who was a bit of a musician, but basically had a sampler. And then we started making hip hop, which was the music I wanted to make. So the first thing is probably being on the right equipment at the right time. And so we started producing records. I think just making a record with a sampler in those days, that was the thing. You know what I mean? And because we sampled, anybody who sampled, a bit like what Aziz had carrying his guitar. So for us, we got all the gigs that involved sampling, which, believe it or not, meant working for the BBC, working for Granada, putting out records. Manchester. Oh, I get right. I know I'm supposed to talk about. I can see Tony going, Johnny, get on and talk about streaming. But I'll probably talk about being in Lancashire. So believe it or not, there was a time when Manchester was like Lancashire. Certainly when I was coming through. You know, everybody looks at it now and thinks, oh, it's amazing. It was a shithole, serious, and it was racist from my point of view, absolutely 100% sexist. People wanted to be like, you know, so anybody who had a dream left Manchester to go to London. And then if you had a bit of talent, London came knocking on your door. So you kind of went down there. So luckily I come through the breakdown scene. And then they thought we had talent. So obviously my records couldn't have been that shit. We went down to London and I got homesick because basically I'd be traveling on the tram and people were ignorant and they wouldn't say hello. And that was something, I mean, probably because I was black and they might have thought I was going to mug them, but they wouldn't say, you know, hello. So I came back to Manchester and my arrogance at the time, I think it was 86 or 87, was if I can't make it in Manchester, I don't want to make it at all, which is totally arrogant. But you could say the same thing. If I can't make it in Chorley, I don't want to make it at all. Or if I can't make it in Preston or I don't even know all the areas, Blackpool, Burnley. Shout some areas out. Where are you from? Morecambe. Has everybody left? Is my eyesight that bad? No, shout some areas out. Where are you from? Yeah, if you can't make it from there, then, you know, like you might say, well, okay, so we came back to Manchester, and then Manchester happened. So every person that went to London from Manchester then felt embarrassed. And I'll be honest, I've probably spent the last 30 years of people telling me fake stories about the Hacienda. Serious, you know, because they missed it. And I'm like, they're coming, they're telling you, you're going, but you were, my head's going, but you weren't there. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think it's having the confidence for starters. And this is probably where it's not about money, and it's just about what you do and what you think you want to do. Also,
what you're saying there about the DIY aspect, which people often think is more to do with guitar bands, but you were doing it as a DJ and a mixer. You had the ideas and you just did them anyway, and you worked out how to do it. I think that's an important message.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it before about just do it. You know what I mean? So if you've got a band, if you've got nowhere to play, go knocking on doors. Somebody will let you play. You know, if somebody won't book you, set up your own gigs and then promote that. You learn a lot of things, but it's got to come, well, if you're an artist, it's got to come from a desire to get your work out. And you still won't probably be thinking about the money. And in many ways, the money's a hard thing because somebody would say, it depends what success looks like to you. So for a lot of artists, if they really boil it down, they want to stand on stage and have people sort of appreciate their playing. I mean, hands up to the artists in the room, who wants that? And be honest, come on. You know, and that's a really good, because that'll make you better. And then some people might say, I just want to write a song. I don't even want to be on stage. I want people to hear my song and maybe like it, but I don't know who's going to like it. So hands up, and it might some of the same people, hands up people who just want to write a song. I'll put both hands up. You know, I wasn't asked about, I just wanted to write songs and write songs better. And the idea of, you get paid if people buy your songs, that is a thing, you know, but like most people say, you can't make money from streaming. So I'm getting to the point now. Tony, you can be happy. And I'll just take this first. Anybody's got any ideas, sort of like, you know, from Lancashire, what they can do, because you've got some really important people here. Sorry, that's my other meeting, but I tell you what I'll do. It's Warner's, if you've ever heard of Warner's. I went to the cafeteria the other day. Well, no, it isn't Warner's, actually. All right. It's my friend Christopher Green who's making a film with Thomas Turgoose, who was he was the young kid. Has anybody seen This Is England? Mm-hmm. So, put your hands up if you see This Is England. And yeah, so Chris is exactly, you know, he's from our background. He's struggling to get, you know, he's managed to get OMD to help him with the final bit. And we meet, believe it or not, in the place me and John know, and John sees us. Every Friday we meet, and it's to almost have a little support network over lattes while he's pulling this film together. And that's the money and the writing.
This sounds quite high end, but it's actually the same thing. This is DIY as well, isn't it? So it's getting an idea and despite all the obstacles, still doing it and getting it done.
He wrote a script. People wouldn't pay him to pay to get a script made. So he became the director and the producer. And he's got a team of people and he's making a film. And it's his passion that's driving it. That's anybody in this room. If you've got that passion, you can do it. And there is another side to, so streaming wise, we released 3 I've got a system where I release 3 records a week. And we make the records and we release the records, 3 records a week. That's digital technology. But obviously, I've been making music with computers since 1985. So I would say that's my skill. If somebody said, here's a guitar, can you do anything with it? I'll go, no. There's experts for that. Pair of drums, experts for that. You know what I mean? But I kind of know a bit about digital and how to, producing records for a long time. And so you have a dream, you have a sound, you have a thing that you want to do in your head. And then I think you put it out. That's the only thing I would say. I think there's something like 140,000 records or pieces of music released every day. That's 140,000. So my 3 a week, nobody cares. And so we had a track covered of Wicked Games. And the person I worked with, he said, apparently I coined this phrase, and it's my age. And so it was out for 4 years before anybody noticed it. So imagine, like, it's just out there. And then people heard it, people liked it. So somebody say, oh, for Spotify, you need a 2 minute, whatever. Everybody will have every trick in the book. This is 5 minutes long. It says, oh, don't have any sound effects. It's got seagulls in it. You know what I mean? I guess that's what you do if you're from Manchester. You think, so they say, why do you have seagulls? Oh, it's a summer track. It's more like seagull shit on your head. Actually, Morecambe and Fleetwood is probably, you've probably got a few seagulls. It's done about, in streams, and when I count the streams across all the platforms, it's done about 100 million streams. Almost 10 million on Spotify. But probably the weirdest thing is, and I'll leave it on this note again, so we're putting out these records, and it's, some of them people would listen to and go, oh, it's boring. Because you just, you do it. And so some of the music I do, I guess you call it mood music. But I'm still a DJ, so it's got like DJ things in there. So I guess for certain people it would sound boring. But for other people, if you sat by a pool in Ibiza where the weather's really hot, and you've got this music that sets the scene, it probably sounds wonderful. And they've done, we do a lot of streams there as well. It doesn't matter. People are using the music. So it doesn't matter what you do. You could do heavy metal. I mean, people talk about Metallica. The Black Album kind of changed a lot of things for people even to think of, was it thrash at the time?
Initially.
Yeah. And they just did what they do. There's probably many examples of bands and artists just doing the music that they do. And you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going. Yes, there's an industry. Aziz is right. But to play that industry game, the only thing a lot of the industry care about is how much money you can make them. And that, for artists, is a different conversation, because that's a game as well, and it's a difficult skill.
So another good thing that you talk about there is creativity, and you may not be able to play guitar, but you can create lots of music, and I think that's an interesting thing as well, and how to sustain that, and you sustain that quite by finding like little spaces to make this music and put it in, a bit like you were doing with your music. So some of the music you made in your initial band, nobody went to see the gigs, but the tracks did really well online. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in a band, you don't have to be a personality, any of that kind of stuff. You could be creative, which means really you could do that anywhere. You could do that in Burnley or Accrington or Kendal or whatever. You don't have to be in Manchester either, do you?
Yeah, and there's a guy from, oh God, is it Gary from Adidas.
Darwin.
So Gary from Adidas. So one of the most powerful people in Adidas, trendy, is Gary from Darwin. And I think he put Adidas on David Beckham and Victoria Beckham.
But he's brought it all back home.
He's got his own label. Is it Special?
Yeah.
Does anybody know Special or something? I'm not a big, yeah. So Gary's a legend. And I did so nobody booked me to DJ, as you can imagine. It can be quite offensive. So I put on my own night. And the other thing is, I wanted to play, which seemed revolutionary at the time. Aziz was right. Reggae and soul was big. I wanted to play hip hop all night. So I booked a venue. I'd got me mates who were breakdancers and that's the other thing about Aziz saying, so I knew all the breakdancers because I was the breakdance DJ in Manchester. So I got my mates to come as a battle, did some flyers from a local college, and then started handing them out and then talking to people. Tony, are we? Yeah. Talking to people about thingy. So I got an article in, was it Blues and Soul? Not an article, it was like a listing. And then so Gary from Darwin came all the way from Darwin. We had people come from Stoke-on-Trent on a Sunday afternoon in Manchester because he loved hip hop. And he at that venue, he basically met nearly everybody into hip hop in Manchester. It only ran for like 4 weeks. I was still at college. I think the first week I lost £4 because I had to promote myself. And I was heartbroken because my mum would have a cleaning job. And a cleaning job, you get paid £6. It was the 80s. The second week, I made £800. And I had to go into college the next day, but I didn't. I went and got a Jerry curl, hence the baseball cap, and a shit jacket. But I probably spent about £400 on records, which is like getting the equipment you dream of. And then you go, right, okay, I get it. I didn't stop there. It was like, right, this is how it works for me.
So that's another good lesson, that level of commitment. Even when you made the money, you don't just waste it, you go straight back in and you just keep going, don't you? That's what you've done basically, isn't it?
Music is I would say it's because it's a passion. It worked for me.
It's not going to work for everybody, is it? But
my goal was, what could I do? It was a love of hip hop. I wanted to get hip hop out as far and wide as possible. It wasn't money, or I wasn't worried about paying bills. But believe it or not, paying bills as well is good for an artist because that will give you focus. But if all you care about is the art, that's fine as well. But you've got to be honest with yourself. If all you care about with the art, hate to say it, relationships don't matter. The money doesn't matter. Whether you had a bath in the morning doesn't matter. Whether you fall out with who you're working with because you're so focused on the project, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you produce at the end and whether it actually is good. It's got your dream.
so basically your passion is your sustainability. Yeah, which actually brings us nicely to the end. I think you've got to go and do a speech now. Yeah. So thanks to the panel. I think there's lots of different bits of advice there. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Hopefully I wouldn't too long. Yeah. I missed. Yeah. Sorry about that. I'll have to. I'll take it.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, John. Right. Okay, everyone. There may be some people who have to leave. Thank you very much to this amazing panel. Round of applause. Yes. Thank you. Make some noise. Okay. So if people have to leave, we do understand that. But an important part of today was we really wanted to hear what the people in the room think. So, we'd like to have that opportunity for people to say what they're feeling and what they're thinking and what the response from these panels may be. So we're going to move the microphone around the room. And myself and Professor Mazierska, who is here with me, we're going to try and facilitate a conversation about your experiences, what you need to help you with advance your, what your experiences are. So we're going to come around the room.
All right.
Hello, hi. Could you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you'd like to say?
Yeah, so my name's Marco Gallia.
Hi, Marco.
Hiya. I've worked as a singer-songwriter. I've been in several bands. And now I work for Lancashire Music Service. I started as a tutor in schools and colleges. And in more recent years, I'm very pleased to... bit of feedback. I'm very pleased to say that I've been made the UK's first music mental health specialist practitioner, moving around the county, trying to find the lines between music and mental health. And I guess what I want to say, what I want to ask is, do we think, guys, that by more of us in Lancashire reaching out, signposting, flag waving for all kinds of musical engagement, for more than just listening, making it original music, do we think that might, take 3. Do we think that might actually bring more support from multiple types of people in Lancashire and the varying cultures and the varied ways of living music, listening to music, and learning about music? Do we think that by signposting for all of that we might actually get a more cohesive, linked, strong community throughout Lancashire? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So apologies. The microphone appears to be. It sounds like the battery's going, doesn't it? Could you just very quickly? I mean, obviously, it's great. One of the things that cropped up earlier today was the idea of accessibility and the idea of mental health. So it's great to know that the local authority is prioritising and actually working in that area. But could you just give us the question again, please, Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The question was whether...
Can we have this mic on? Sorry.
Whether it will help to,
Try
as I
again.
understood,
Yeah.
to further music in Lancashire by having a cohesive strategy. Yes?
Yeah.
And I believe it is the case. Actually, I didn't have a chance to ask Michael Kill here whether he could see a change from this respect following the elections, or if he hopes to do it. As I think what certainly has happened, and this doesn't really refer only to music, but also to other arts, is that generally they are not very I would say not very respected in Britain, if I can say so. There is somehow expectation that they will pay for themselves. And this is certainly reflected by education system, but also by other, initiatives. If we compare Britain with other countries like, Germany. So certainly it's the case. And some of the problems which were mentioned here, I think, are due to the lack of strategy and lack of support, and I would say strategy, especially at the highest level. So.
Yeah, I think what I'm suggesting, because I'm actually the person who's trying to bring a music association together in Lancashire. It's not my thing. It has to belong to everyone, and everyone should have a voice, which is actually what we're trying to establish. We're trying to start these conversations and better understand what people think and feel and what they need.
Sure.
But for sure, I guess I'm saying, well, we can take control of it. That doesn't mean that we go off and become maverick and do, we can respectfully, it's kind of what Johnny was saying, really, where you don't take no for an answer. If we want to do this, if we want, I believe that we can, conjoin our infrastructures, and our ecosystems to greater effect, to be more strategic. But everyone here, so we have in here councillors who are in charge of culture, are responsible for culture. They want that too. You know, I'm not putting words in people's mouths here, but actually this job is huge, you know, to create a fair and diverse and accessible music industry. You know, I think we've got a chance of doing it in the county. You know, I think we almost are at a, you know, clearly I've said there's loads of brilliant things that are happening here, but we could view it as kind of a ground zero point where, you know, this is a point where we draw a line and then we look to make everything better. You know, so, and that we're inventive, you know, we find new and better ways of doing things. But that can't come from me, who thinks, you know, what I'm saying is that actually we can achieve more by working together. You know, I firmly believe that, you know. And there is synergy and symbiosis to be gained by bringing the agents in the music industry in Lancashire together. Because actually, do you know what? We probably all want the same thing. You know, we want, you know, wouldn't it be great if Lancashire, people looked from outside Lancashire and said, what are they, how are they doing that? Why is the music so good there? You know, so you'd like have a map, and that map is not just functional where you can go, well, you know, I'm starting out, I'm going to play 64 open mic nights around the county, I'm going to get really good. Then I'm going to go, you know, and that might catalyze some promoters going, actually, you know, I really like what these people are doing. In some cases, the artists, like we heard from the Empire Police, you know, Jordeo, kind of doing it himself, you know, putting on his own festivals, building things, you know, not taking no for an answer, not actually doubting the conviction, you know, the sense of conviction, you know. I mean, I'm kind of rambling, but, you know, there's this idea that of a succession plan, a succession route, that you start in one place and then there's somewhere to go after that and somewhere to go after that, taking you all the way to, you know, maybe having local bands headlining the Empress Ballrooms or you know, or other significant venues within the county. But actually, it's not, you know, we just don't quite view it like that. We don't see it as an ecosystem. We don't see succession routes. And one of the things that has come out a lot today is information and knowledge. You know, I think that something like the Lancashire Music Association can feed from things like this, find out what, and in fact, actually one of the main aims today was to find out what the issues are, what the challenges are. Yeah. Anyway, Eva's saying we need to hear from everyone else in this room.
Okay.
Can we get a working mic and move it around? Does that kind of answer the question, though?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm excited to see what comes from it. And thank you for hearing my two pieces.
It was excellent question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Testing 1, 2. Right. I'm Twanix. I write my own stuff. I do drums in several bands. I am a choir director. I'm an actual graphic and promotional artist. I have been an asylee for 8 years before finally getting the right to remain and therefore to work in November of 2021. And the fact that I am here means that I have not taken the Home Office's no for an answer. So the tone of today's conference so far has been more than a bit disturbing, because Aziz Ibrahim has rightly said that music shouldn't have any prejudice, but Evie was mentioning something along the lines of not the youngest or the prettiest. If I read between the lines of something like that, it tells me that ageism is very rampant and very rife. So, you know, it then comes back to things that are close to my heart. Where are the opportunities for those of us who are refugees or ex-asylees? Those of us who are not technically young people or very visibly not young at all. You know, those getting into music after escaping decades of abuse. You're people who are not only hungry for opportunity, but have done so much to survive, who are resilient, but are also weary. So far, the advice has been towards younger people in the industry. Where is the support for pretty much every other demographic in there? And if there isn't, why are we here and what is being done.
Okay, thanks. Great question. Can I respond? I'm going to try and keep my responses brief. So there are so the Lancashire Music Association.
I think somebody wants to answer the question who has relevant
Could we take the microphone to Kim
yes.
in the back? But okay, cool.
We listened to some amazing people today, so I'm going to be really quick. My name's Kim. I've been in the music industry since 1979. That was my very first tour. I've worked my way up from selling T-shirts, tour accounting, tour management, crisis management, and now I've written a book about it. But my point is, I'm nearly 65. I'm a woman, I'm female, so there's hardly any of those about. Secondly, my father was Punjabi, so that's another thing. So when I hear there's all these things these walls that are built to stop people, if you feel there's a wall there, you need to think of some other career. Because if you haven't got the passion to knock down that wall and go for it, that's what you need. You don't need anything else, you just need the passion to succeed.
Also, sorry, can I just add? On the other hand, we have to be aware that we work here in kind of difficult professions where the rate of success is low. This is true about, popular music business. This is true also about academia. So we were presenting people who succeeded, but behind every success there are also many failures. So I think this is also worth taking into account, that not everybody succeeds in the chosen profession. This is also the reason that people move from profession to profession, and I would say the environment in popular music business is getting more difficult. So we should also be aware of that, largely because there is so much music around. Yes, so if suddenly people stop producing music, there will be still enough music to listen for probably millions, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. Yes, so this means that every year it's more difficult for young musicians, either young in age or young in experience, to move into this market, and we should also be aware of that. And this is also true about people who write books or who want to make films. So as I said, this is a very tough profession. If you want to make sure you make your you earn your living, maybe it's worth checking where there are shortages in employment and choose something else. So,
well, I think there's no doubt you have to have resilience. You have to have resilience in this sector. I think I'm trying to give a practical response, and actually a lot of the things that have been said here today, there's been lots of opinions, lots of different thoughts, lots of different ideas, and we've not really even scratched the surface. There are actually some mechanisms in place which will enable people to navigate the industry. But what I'm proposing is that, and bearing in mind, the Lancashire Music Association is talking to various stakeholders. So that includes Lancashire Music Hub, Lancashire Music Service, artists. This is the idea of bringing people together and better understanding the problems so we can actually come up with ideas of how to resolve them. Within 4 or 5 hours, it's impossible to explain to someone how to navigate this complex industry. All we can really do is open some doors, present some thoughts, some ideas, see how some people, have navigated the industry successfully. But actually, we are planning to have clinics that in essence, what we're going to do is go out around Lancashire. And so, when you have a problem or you have a concern, that actually there's somebody that you can talk to about it who has expertise within the music industry, and so that's going to happen. And the idea is that we don't just do it once, is that we follow through and we continue to build networks. And, I think ambition, and resilience, and to actually, but we have to meet people to understand, what's going right, what's going wrong, before we can help them resolve these issues as individuals, and that makes up a big picture, So, to kind of summarise, we plan and have some resources to go out in Lancashire and meet people around Lancashire and discuss what they might do, what their next steps are, how to resolve some of the issues that they may be having, and to learn also to gain information as to what the obstacles are. Because actually then by interfacing with, our councils and politicians, some of them may be really big issues, that as an individual we can't really impact on, but as a group of people we can have a louder and more powerful voice. So it's not about me, it's about harvesting, better understanding what people want and need, so we can do something about it. And I feel passionately about that.
Okay, Tony, I think there were more questions.
Okay, more questions, please.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. So, hi, my name's Leonard Williams. I've had various roles across 8 years. I'm currently the project manager for one of the music organisations in Wales. I'm from Cymru. The points, the conversations that have been made today in this conference are definitely something that Wales, the music industry in Wales, can learn from, especially with the landscape of the music industry in Wales at the moment being quite stagnant, not really any advancement. So again, taking these points from the panel, the conversations, is definitely something that, again, we can learn in Wales on how to improve our music industry. So thank you for that, Tony.
Thank you. I'll be honest, Lennon, I couldn't hear very much of that, but it sounded good.
So he was saying basically that, if I'm right, you're from Wales. So he's from Wales, and he's saying basically the Welsh kind of music industry is very stagnant at the moment, and basically everything that has been spoken about today essentially will help him.
Thank you.
He can take the points today, and this isn't just a Lancashire issue, is it? It's a nationwide issue. It's rural town issues, and we're seeing some kind of progress with Yorkshire and stuff doing sort of a similar thing. And the more we can all rise up and join together, as Tony's suggesting, the more we can actually make a difference. So, carry on.
I really like the idea that people will look at what we're doing, so we start to measure activity. We do things like have these clinics, we give encouragement, we provide access to the knowledge that enables the professionalisation, that enables people the opportunity to have a career in music. And there's many, many different possibilities. So, we move forward, we try things, we measure again, we see progress, we see growth, and that we can also, other people will look at what we're doing, seeing more music, more venues thriving, better outputs, everything basically getting better, the standard of everything. And by benchmarking with each other, we lift each other's standards to higher levels, of excellence. So things like that, can really happen if we start to, conjoin our infrastructure. Different places are different, people are different. But I think we do need to sort of, there's not one solution that fits all. So we have to kind of go out there and work out how to help people, how to help people achieve their aims. But it can be done. I think a really important point is it can be done. Rich Dyer, who, there's people in this room, who are making music and having lots of music being streamed, and, people at different stages of the journey, but, the intention is to try and help make sense of it all and to invite you on this journey so we can all work on these things together, and overcome the challenges, and work out solutions. To be honest, no one has all the answers. No one does. I think we've got some, and we've got ideas of things that can help, but certainly working together, and it's so, people have different opinions. It's okay to have different opinions, but we have to learn from these perspectives, and I'm convinced we can make it much better than it is currently.
Should we finish here?
Is there any other questions? We'll do another question and.
Just one more question.
Yes.
And I think we have to close. Yeah.
Hi. Without sounding like opening, this is really dying, isn't it?
Sorry.
Without sounding like I'm opening a can of worms and laying it at your feet, just for an example of something in particular that I think plagues Preston, is that there's no medium, larger sized venue here.
Yeah.
And obviously one is here, it's just not open, which is the Guildhall. So So in your opinion, what would the methodology you'd see the association try and deal with that, or how would you go about that, do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So venue mapping is probably the key, so you kind of have to look at what you've got and what you don't have. And actually, if you think about it, through looking at, you also can look at where venues used to be as well, build a picture. But if we can get information that's not anecdotal, we can have conversations with the councillor for culture for Preston. But actually, the Guildhall is, part of the Guildhall is opening. Is it this evening?
I'm not sure if it's this evening. It's the foyer that's opening.
The foyer, yeah. But that's an improvement, isn't it? I mean, I don't think that's progress, And, they say Rome wasn't built in a day, but it's no one's fault that there's, I think it's rack in the bit, there's structural issues, but it would be someone's fault if we let people in there and people got hurt, But actually, you've raised an issue that maybe maybe that venue won't exist in Lancashire at the moment, but it might be Empress Ballrooms, in Blackpool, which becomes, rather than everyone having to go to Manchester and Liverpool, which are great cities for music, we're kind of in the shadow, but I think it's time we start bloodying their nose. No offence to Liverpool and Manchester, they're great. There's a hand gone up there. I'm sorry, could we get you the mic? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all right.
Yeah.
How's it going? My name's Jason. I'm from Preston DJ Social, which is a mental health-based DJ club. And I've been to a few meetings. Yeah, met you before, Tony. So, a few meetings. And every room I go in, it is the elephant in the room. Like, know that the guild has used not to be open. Has been shut for 10 years. Yeah. And it's all well and good saying this pipeline and building up, but we should be the gateway for bigger things in this city.
I
agree.
It's
this venue that's, when they get big enough, you go, right, going to Manchester. We should have this as well. And it's frustrating because it's a great space. I went to the toilet and I was like, oh yeah, this can fit 1,500 people in this toilet. It's massive. It's like, it's just ripe for something. Yeah. What's not happening? I don't understand it. Sorry, I'm just really passionate about that.
No, it's a great point. Thank you very much. Great point. I'm going to suggest ground zero is where we are today. I hear what you're saying. Do you know, if someone wants to put a gig on in here, it is possible to do that. Someone needs to take, find a way of commercially making it work. So it might be that it's something that's funded by the Arts Council, or, this is what I'm saying. If we can sit down and have conversations, you can say, well, this is what I want to do, and we can help you work out how to do it. Because there's many, many different ways of doing it. And actually, as I say, I know that our civic institutions are serious, interested and committed, albeit resources are limited. But there's also arts organisations, there's PRS Foundation. The Arts Council have a grassroots fund that is specifically for getting, things off the ground. But when we go out and we have our clinics, we can have these conversations and we can find the solutions. I think, is that a helpful response? Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It is, but if someone's going to do a gig, the venue has to get paid. There's but as I say, when we sit down, there's the economics. We can work out the economics, and actually, you don't have to start off in here. You can start off somewhere smaller. And actually, look at there's a guy sitting next to you who, has sort of had an idea, like many other people. And he went and made that idea happen. He was doing reunions that were incredibly successful. It starts with an idea, and what I'm saying is that the Lancashire Music Association is somewhere you can come to talk about your ideas and to get help how to work them out, to access knowledge and expertise, And if we don't have it, well, to be fair, I think we can help in pretty much.
Sorry, I didn't mean to attack you with everyone seems to have same issue. And like you say, one day I'd love to put an event on in here.
Yeah.
But you do look at it, and Preston does seem to be missed on the touring circuit. It's like Blackpool, Preston won, and it's.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? There's loads of great stuff that goes on in Preston. I think we kind of have to be positive and embrace the success and celebrate that and use that as a means to inspire the next things that we're going to do. If I have an idea, so this thing today, I'll be honest with you, it was my idea, and I thought it was a good idea, so I found a way to make it work and invited, told as many people as we could. It's when you're starting something new, it takes time. This is the first of many conversations, but we're trying to create a structure or a means to enable that. So when people are saying, well, we need more venues, well, let's look at that. And if we can't do it, what other inventive solution is there? What about pop-ups? There are parks in Preston, places like Winkley Square, that have hosted phenomenal venues. The council are open to conversations. They're probably not going to, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, they're probably not going to want somebody who's never done anything before to do, something big and high profile without some assurances or without working with somebody who actually has done it before, But actually, you've got to start somewhere building that reputation, and building those relationships and building those networks that enable ambitious projects to happen. But we should be ambitious. We absolutely should be ambitious. And I've presented some people today who have done remarkable things. There are people in this room doing remarkable things. I really feel I must take my hat off to, I know, some of the, the musicians, music makers, that we have in Lancashire punching at a really heavy weight. So, and I think, a little bit of support, mentoring. This has come up a lot today, knowledge, information, mentoring, advice. In the first panel, there were people who were attributing their success to having had access to great mentorship. I think one other thing that I would just say that I'm aware was at the moment, for this year, there was no undergraduate course available in Lancashire. On a positive note, for next year, we've just started a recruitment cycle at UCLan for a degree in music for media. So it's coming from a different angle, but it is possible to study a degree in making music. It's going to be possible from next year. So that might be of interest to some people. Look, things aren't perfect. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. And the idea is that we make it better, and that by working together, I'm open to collaborate, but bringing people together, we can do that. We can make Lancashire a place that's famed for its music and culture, and that's not to detract from the great things that already happen. That's to build on the shoulders of giants.
I just have a quick one. I think someone from this front table hand up at some point. Am I right there? Someone wanted to answer a question from these two tables? No? No? No. Oh, sorry. I'm blind. But we got one over here. That's absolutely fine. No.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is AKP. I'm an artist and an event promoter. Basically, mine would just be like some form of encouragement, not necessarily a question, because I think most of the questions have been looked at. So I released my first ever music here in Preston, in Lancashire, and the person that first recorded me, like the first time I was in the studio section, Nick over there. He was the one that recorded me, and we've been releasing music. So I want to encourage everyone that. Hello. Hello. Okay.
Yeah,
so I want to encourage everyone that we should take opportunity of this platform, because I think that it's a good platform for us to, develop ourselves and find mentorship. And like some months before now, I was with Tony, and he told me about.
Sorry. Working.
Hello. Yeah. So as I was saying, so a month ago, I went to Tony just to ask some questions, because I'm someone that I like asking a lot of questions so that I will be knowledgeable about what to do. And Tony gave me some advices and told me about what to do. Now, I do Afrobeat music and is some sort of African music. I know that now, asking Tony about, what plans does he has to develop, African music within the association, might maybe be too much for now, because it's just a platform that is starting to, develop. But I would say that, as you develop the association, we should equally look at other forms of genre that are not popular, because, for example, now, like the Afrobeat and Amapiano, they're doing very well in the mainstream. But, when you come down to Preston, it's not very popular. Like myself, I've had to put on my own shows, because when I released music, there was no one listening to it. So what I did was I started doing events so that I can put people together to listen to the song that I make. And from there, I was able to get other Afrobeat musicians as well into that platform as well. So yes, please. So as we go on, it would be nice to look into that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to be continued, but you've already put on successful Afrobeat events around Preston. It's just moving it forward. So if we can continue those conversations, I'll do everything I can to help and support you. So same with everyone else. Was there anyone else before the plan really now is to try and continue this conversation over at the Ferret. So some networking, and then we have some music this evening. Johnny J is hosting the open mic. But I think basically, if no one else has any questions, then we continue our conversations and our networking over at the Ferret.
I've got one more thing to say. Sorry, I've got the microphone. Tony's like,
take it off him.
No, I just want to say a real big thank you for Tony. Look, we're all in the room. We've all got, our own frustrations. There's so much emotion in the room. We're getting them out and we're expressing them. But Tony is here to help, and Tony is one of the most generous people in the industry that I know. And he's put on this free of charge for everyone, paid out of his own pocket, so we can have this network.
We've had some support.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I can't forget the people who have supported, but I know that he's done a lot as well. And so look at him in a good light. He's great, and he's here to help every single one of you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone here.
And thanks to Heather, Lancashire County Council, Heather Fox, for being here. And hopefully this has been enlightening and helpful for everyone. Let's go and get a pint over at the Ferret. Thank you, everyone.